is 20 minutes to midday in Israel, and we're cutting to the live pictures of the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who is hosting the U.S. President Joe Biden. Let's listen in.
The world sees that support and the moral clarity that you have demonstrated from the moment Israel was attacked. You've rightly drawn a clear line between the forces of civilization and the forces of barbarism. You described what Hamas did as sheer evil. It is exactly that. Hamas murdered children in front of their parents and parents in front of their children. They burnt people alive. They raped and murdered women. They beheaded soldiers. They searched for the secret hiding places where parents hid their children. And just imagine, Mr. President, the fear and the panic of those little children in their last moments as the monsters found out their hiding places. Hamas kidnapped women, children, elderly, Holocaust survivors. I know you share our outrage on this, and I know you share our determination to bring these people back. On October 7th, Hamas murdered 1,400 Israelis, maybe more. This is in a country of fewer than 10 million people. This would be equivalent to over 50,000 Americans murdered in a single day. That's 29 11s. That is why October 7th is another day that will live in infamy. Mr. President, you rightly said that Hamas is worse than ISIS. The German chancellor, who visited here yesterday, said that Hamas were the new Nazis. You're both right. And just as the civilized world united to defeat the Nazis and united to defeat ISIS, the civilized world must unite to defeat Hamas. I can assure you, Mr. President, Israel is united to defeat Hamas, and we will defeat Hamas and remove this terrible threat from our lives. The forces of civilization will prevail for our sake, for your sake, for peace and security in our region and in the world. Mr. President, for the people of Israel, there's only one thing better than having a true friend like you standing with Israel, and that is having you standing in Israel. Your visit here is the first visit of an American president in Israel at a time of war. It is deeply, deeply moving. It speaks to the depth of your personal commitment to Israel. It speaks to the depth of your personal commitment to the future of the Jewish people and the one and only Jewish state. So I know I speak for all the people of Israel when I say, thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for standing with Israel today, tomorrow, and always.
Well, Mr. Prime Minister, thank you very much. Look, folks, I wanted to be here today for a simple reason. I wanted the people of Israel, the people of the world, to know where the United States stands. I've had my great Secretary of State here. He's been here for a lot, but I wanted to personally come and make that clear. The terrorist group Hamas has slaughtered, as has been pointed out, over 1,300 people. And it's not hyperbole to suggest slaughtered, and including 31 Americans as part of that. And they've taken scores of people hostage, including children. You said, imagine what those children hiding from Hamas were thinking. It's beyond my comprehension to be able to imagine what they're thinking. Beyond my comprehension. They're committed evils that and atrocities that make ISIS look somewhat more rational. You know, Americans are grieving with you. They really are. And Americans are worried. Americans are worried because we know this is not an easy field to navigate, what you have to do. But the fact is that Israel, as they respond to these attacks, it seems to me that have to continue to ensure that you have what you need to defend yourselves. And we're going to make sure that occurs, as you know. And we have to also bear in mind that Hamas does not represent all the Palestinian people, and it has brought them only suffering. You know, years ago, I asked the Secretary of State when he and I were working in the Senate to write something for me, and he said, he wrote a line that I think is appropriate. He said, it's not, we lead, not just, well, I won't go into it. I'll wait later. Taking too much time. But the point is this, that I was deeply saddened and outraged by the explosion at the hospital in Gaza yesterday. And based on what I've seen, it appears as though it was done by the other team, not you. But there's a lot of people out there not sure. So we've got to overcome a lot of things. And it also means encouraging life-saving capacity to help the Palestinians who are innocent, caught in the middle of this. And, well, anyway, that's who we are. Not just me, but I mean, that's who the United States is. And it's just not the example of our power, it's the power of our example that's almost as important. The world's looking. Israel has a value set like the United States does and other democracies. And they're looking to see what we're going to do. So, Mr. Prime Minister, I'm very happy to be back in Israel with you. Thank you for having me, and I'm looking forward to having a thorough discussion about where everybody goes from here. But thank you. And I want to say to the people of Israel, their courage, their commitment, their bravery is stunning. It's really stunning. I'm proud to be here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, you've just been listening to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and U.S. President Joe Biden with their opening statements at the outset of this visit of support by Biden for Israel. A couple of the headlines as we bring in Al Jazeera's Alan Fisher, who's standing by for us in Tel Aviv, covering this trip. A couple of the quotes, Alan, from the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu. He praised Biden's moral clarity. He framed the war in Gaza as a conflict between the forces of civilization and the forces of barbarity. He appeared to do some math and on the death tolls and compared essentially the death toll in Israel to 29 9/11s. That's on the Netanyahu side, and highlights from Biden, and then you'll tell me, Alan, what you took away from this. Joe Biden says he was here, obviously, to show support for Israel. Quote, the Hamas's atrocities make ISIS look somewhat more rational, end quote. And also, importantly, Biden referenced briefly the strike on the hospital in Gaza that took place about 14, 15 hours ago now that killed 500 Palestinians. And he says from what he has seen, from what Biden has seen, the hospital explosion was caused by the other side, the other team, I believe he said, end quote. So that was Biden saying, as far as he's concerned, Israel did not carry out that attack. That's the state of play. Those are the opening remarks. Alan, what can you tell us?
I think what is clear is that when the Americans said that the national security team would be looking at what actually caused the explosion in Gaza on Tuesday night, that there would be a longer inquiry. It seems that Joe Biden has already decided he knows what happened by saying, in a very poor choice of words, that the other team was responsible. He did say that he was deeply outraged by what had happened and concerned. But this visit is an extraordinary show of support for the Israelis, and essentially by Joe Biden saying that he believes that it was a misfiring rocket that caused the chaos and the carnage at the hospital in Gaza. that essentially there's now a green light for Israel to do what it wants. His comparisons to ISIS, that was a very, very poor choice of words by the president to even begin to consider that ISIS was rational. If Donald Trump had said something like that, there would be outrage for days. It was a very, very poor choice of words. But it's clear that Joe Biden is giving his support to whatever may come in the next few days. We are aware that there was talk that the Israelis postponed the ground war to allow Joe Biden to carry out this visit, but the suggestion obviously is that in the next few days we are going to see a ground offensive. Just on what Benjamin Netanyahu said, it was interesting that he did make the comparison to 29/11s. Benjamin Netanyahu has spent a great deal of time in the United States. He's aware of the American psyche, and by plumbing into 9/11, he knows what he's doing. He's absolutely certain what he's doing. And there was that phrase where he said, not only is it great that Joe Biden is standing with Israel, it's great that Joe Biden is standing in Israel, because, as I say, this is an extraordinary show of support for Israel at this time. Normally, American presidents are calling for restraint. Here is essentially Joe Biden giving the green light to what may happen in the next couple of days, albeit saying that there is a desperate need to get humanitarian aid into Gaza and get innocent people out of Gaza.
What's left for Biden to do? I mean, Netanyahu and Biden have both made some important statements here. This was only moments after Biden arrived in Tel Aviv. What else is he going to do during this trip?
Well, on his way back, he's going to be speaking to President Sisi of Egypt and President Mahmoud Abbas of the Palestinian Authority. Now, the reason he's going to speak to them on the phone is that they cancelled the summit that was due to be held alongside the King of Jordan in Amman, because they wanted Joe Biden to call for a ceasefire, and it's clear that the Americans aren't at that point, whether it be a humanitarian ceasefire like the Secretary General of the UN has called for in the last few hours, or an absolute ceasefire. And the fact that he wasn't prepared to put his name to that meant that the Arab leaders felt that they would be complicit in whatever happens in the next few days. And so, unusually, how often do you get a US president being snubbed, and particularly from a close ally like Jordan? The Arab leaders, the three of them, decided to walk away. Now, everything has been complicated by what has happened over the last 24 hours at the hospital in Gaza, and that makes this trip much more dynamic. But what is clear is that Joe Biden's support for Israel, that he expressed hours after what happened on the 7th of this month, is unwavering. And he again promised Israel whatever they needed to defend themselves.
That's Al Jazeera's Alan Fisher reporting just moments after we heard from the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the U.S. President Joe Biden, who has just landed in Israel to show his support to Netanyahu and to Israel.